Hi, good afternoon. Anyone who's joining us on the live stream or on YouTube afterwards. Today, I am joined by Djuka Selendik in Milwaukee. Do you mind telling us a bit about yourself, please?
Yeah, I'm Djuka. I live in Milwaukee. I'm a tester. I've been testing for about 9 years professionally, but I have been in some sort of technology job since I was 16. So I've been around for a while now, uh, living in this reality. So testing out of all of the things that I have done so far been the most interesting to me and the most rewarding for my career. So I really enjoy it, and I'm glad to be here testing with you today.
I'm actually glad to have the, pairing with the my first female co-host for today. It's been easy to find blokes who want to put themselves up on a stage.
Always.
Yeah. Um, and so your background, are you working on mobile apps at the moment?
Yeah, at the moment, well, this is actually the first mobile app that as I like to call it, test own. Um, that I'm responsible for testing. I'm working for Equinox Media, um, which is a set of fitness brands, and they have a new application that I am now test in charge of. So that's my first foray into like really jumping in and testing on mobile applications,
Mm-hmm.
and uh, it's definitely been interesting, a huge learning experience. Most of my background is in desktop applications. So, yeah, I'm interested to see how you test on like across these apps that we're going to be looking at today, and see like what tools you use and all of that stuff. This is going to be a big learning experience for me, I'm pretty sure.
Okay. Well, we've picked the topic of finance apps to test at the moment. So I am sharing some screens with some of my mobile apps. I've got an Android device here on the left hand side. I think I might just go back to the dashboard. And you can see my thumb interactions or where my fingerprint is interacting with that. I also have, let's see if the iOS. Oh,
So
sorry.
I'm not seeing your screen
Yeah, yeah.
here.
Sorry.
You're
I
fine.
I dismissed it to make our faces larger. And then I realized I hadn't put it back on.
I'm also experiencing quite a bit of lag with this connection. I'm not sure if it's me or you or what's going on.
Well, if anyone's on the live stream and is experiencing any lag, please let us know. You can just pop something in the chat. Um, I am trying to. The internet in Australia is ridiculously shit. Uh, we've spent a lot of money, and the government has fucked it up a lot. Oh, excuse that French. YouTube might not like me if I have swearing too early on in my YouTube videos.
Yeah, so our internet here isn't the greatest either. So I totally feel the pain. I
Hmm.
might uh, turn my camera off. Sometimes that helps, but then that's not the best for a live stream either. So let's try.
It's okay. It's probably because we're just trying to do everything over the internet across Australia, US. Um, and I don't know if there's like high traffic demand in at the afternoon there.
Gotcha. Yeah, let's start testing, I guess.
Mm. And so I've got Android and iOS side by side. I find it useful to put the two next to each other so that you can pick up on subtle differences. And sometimes people care about these subtle differences. Sometimes product owners don't care that Android is just a little different to iOS.
Hmm.
With the apps I had set up, which one do we want to do first? I might do was
You had the com.
yeah, I think the Comsec one, Comsec Pocket is a learn how to invest app. It gives you the option of investing in maybe some 6 or 7 index funds. So the ASX dividends, global companies, emerging markets. If you want to invest in health tech, sustainability, and I think there's a tech savvy, which is mostly your heavy US tech stocks.
Right. Okay. Let's go back to the front of it, I guess, the front page, and jump in.
What grabs your attention here?
Well, the first thing that always grabs my attention is notifications, which I like to turn off on all of my stuff. So,
Yeah.
um, but I also like to look through what kind of notifications get sent out. Um, I find notifications usually as a user to be quite annoying. And I find that most apps that I use have way too many of them and give us way too much information that we could just, find out on our own by just opening the application.
Yeah,
Um,
I agree with that sentiment. I hadn't read most of my notifications. It seems that the blue on the left hand side is indicating it's a new notification, but it's really weird that I've got these new ones up here and it looks like I read them, and then there's older new ones.
yeah, I was looking at that. The blue seems to indicate unread. The blue
Yeah,
on the side.
let's see if that changes that then. So in Australia, our end of financial year is around the 30th of June. Oh, yeah, it just means I haven't read them, but reading the header doesn't count them as dismissed.
Okay. Yeah. How do you feel about that blue line on the side there? To me, it's a little like, okay, cool, but I also kind of maybe see it being problematic for people to actually see that.
Yeah. I think it's just a subtle way to try and draw your attention. If I can. Okay. That's the screen reader, but that's not actually sharing any sound.
And
Um,
right, like it should also dismiss them, like the notification should go away once you read it.
yeah.
It
I
just,
find it a little annoying that I have to individually go in and read every single notification if I want to get rid of that. Because now that blue, that 9 plus there, indicates the unread ones. So I'm like, I don't care about record highs in May or I don't know,
yeah,
notifications that long ago. And yeah, I have to go back through to May 2020 to clear up all of those notifications.
is there any center in the like is there a settings tab?
Let's have a look.
Something.
We've got login settings. Um, there's not a lot here.
Things where I would want to set my notifications.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. So there's not really a lot. Yeah,
Okay. Well, that would probably be something that I wouldn't use with this app. Um, and that's usually why I turn it off completely because I don't find most of these features to be very useful.
yeah,
Uh, but that's just the first thing I look at when I see when I download something and it gives me 9 plus notifications or one or two or however many. especially when you sometimes first sign up for an app or an account. You get a whole slew of things notifying you all about pretty much the same thing.
Yeah. There's often like account creation stuff like thank you for giving us your email and your tactile number, or if we're
Mhm.
talking finance apps, things like verify your email and all of these things that trigger system notifications if you don't have them set up, and are useful to be reminded maybe 6 to 9 months. But once you get them all in the and the fact that there isn't even an option of um, getting rid of the in-app notifications. And I know this is a fairly new-ish app, because if I compare this with the other Combank investment app, which is a little bit older, the UI is definitely a bit better, but I'm not putting the other one up at the moment. And yeah, they're still on version 1 of that app for Android. Let's see what it is on iOS. I'll just have to reshare that one. But yeah, that's a good point about the notifications being annoying.
But yeah, I mean, it's like might be pretty minor, right? But it's one of those things like how you perceive an application from like the first moment you get it. If you're already overloaded, or if there's too much information coming at you, it might make you feel less favorable to other things in the app.
Mm. Be nice if this mirroring would like to work some point today. I found, at least when I screen share with iOS and I turn on accessibility settings, it does tend to come through the desktop audio at least, but this screen share app is not working at the moment. What's
Okay,
happening?
well, we can continue testing on the
There we go.
Android if you want.
Ah, I got
There
it.
it is. Woo.
And I use Face ID for that one, so I don't accidentally leak my PIN. Don't want to live stream my PIN out all over the internet. Oh, not payment ID. So for accessibility shortcuts, I've enabled the tap the side button 3 times to bring off some shortcuts. The color filters, if I enable it on my device, you can see that it's gone grayscale, but because I've got a light, you can't see it because the light's shining on the screen. But the grayscale doesn't come across on the screen share on the AirPlay. But with if I go into VoiceOver, one of the things I like to do.
Pocket hamburger button.
Can you hear that? If I do a 2-finger, okay. It might just be coming through the desktop audio, but not being shared to Whereby, but it is shared on the live stream. If I do a 2-finger scroll from the bottom,
Heading hamburger button. Pocket heading.
It'll
I can hear it.
Plus.
Okay.
Current value $2,337.80.
So it'll just read everything.
$354.97 plus 17.90%. A circle.
So I'm going to stop it before it reads everything. But one of the bugs I noticed just from a quick flick through was that this image here that says notifications
Plus.
just says plus.
Yeah.
So if you couldn't see the screen, it's like, what is there?
Plus. Add.
Okay, yeah.
Like there is no indication of what is there from an accessibility point of view. It really should say notifications button, double tap to open. And so that was just the first thing I picked up. And if I do a double tap
left button back
on the screen, it can do that. And
notification center heading. Chevron left
hamburger
button.
That's
plus add. Chevron left button back.
Anyway, Um,
Alert. Accessibility short. Select voiceover off.
if you
It's
want to,
definitely
sorry, you go.
it looks quite a bit different in iOS than it does in Android.
Yeah, if we compare them, I think the branding is quite similar, but
Yeah,
do we still have the blue? Oh, we do
you
have
know,
the blue on iOS.
we do. Okay.
Yeah, it's just a bit thinner.
Mm-hmm. This actually, like the iOS version, actually looks easier on my eyes. The smaller text is a little more, I don't know.
I don't think I have any large font enabled. Often on my mobile devices, another accessibility thing I do is ramp up the font size, and it's a little bit harder to do that on Android. So let's have a look at font size and style. I think I've got it increased a little bit, but yeah, you can ramp that all the way up. Oh yeah. Oh, notification center at the top doesn't another easy way to find weird UI bugs is just increase the font up really large. Oh, look at that. I can't even see what my balance is.
That's a pretty big fail there.
Yeah. iOS tends to accommodate that stuff a little bit better, and I've got a shortcut on the home screen that allows you to increase the font size. But I think I have to clear that from memory and relaunch that one. Yeah, basically on iOS they ignore font size increase, which is almost equally as bad.
Yeah, that's not great.
Hmm.
I know quite a few people who use the increased font sizes on their phones. And then I also found out both of my parents recently when I was looking at them use their phones use bold
Yep.
font sizes. So that was really interesting to me because I usually like don't personally do not go in and mess with any of that.
Hmm.
But
Yeah.
um,
On the previous mobile team I was working on, we actually plugged in some analytics because on iOS you can easily track the accessibility metrics, and we created a custom metric to measure how many people had switched on custom font sizes. And it was something like, it was a pretty high percentage, either 40 or 60% of people used some sort of non-standard font size increase.
mhm.
Only a tiny percent of that, like 2 or 3%, actually had a smaller font. So on iOS, you've got the option of turning the. So this one here is the default size, but you can turn it down even smaller if you want. But yeah, we can't see that reflected on the ComSec Pocket app.
So on the Android version, looks like if you scroll down there, um, the text kind of goes off the box there with bolds.
Yeah, if the text is larger than the area,
Hmm.
um, it looks like
So
they don't expand to the new line, which is a common problem with font increases on mobile. That if you don't allow things to expand vertically, then they either just completely
right.
overlap, or you you can't even read what's there anymore. Um, so this is actually a good example side by side of how people can, or how developers or designers or mobile teams can ignore accessibility on different spectrums. You could take the iOS approach here and just ignore font increases. Does mean your app is always going to not look terrible. Uh, or if you do accommodate font sizes and then just don't care or respond to that,
Mhm.
makes your app unreadable. I think in the grand scheme of things, ignoring the font increase is the lesser of two evils um, in this one, but it still feels a little bad, right?
A little more work needed for sure.
Yeah. And it's one of those things that if you design elements such that they scale vertically, you tend to less likely to have these types of problems.
But then it doesn't fit into the pretty box.
Yes.
Yes, but what's more important, right?
Yeah. So with my previous team, we'd have two minimum standards when it came with accessibility. One, the font increase should be accommodated up to a practical limit. Some design elements, like bottom navbar navigation, still just look terrible and don't work. So it was fine that didn't. There were elements where it didn't respond to the font increase simply because the design didn't accommodate that at all, and that the screen reader should be able to make sense. It didn't have to be perfect because creating a good experience when you can't see the screen does require a little bit of thinking ahead. But it's not hard to make sure that your buttons have a label button, and so when a screen reader reads it, it reads as a button. If you've got unlabeled elements, it's really bad. Okay.
Cool. Well, let's go back to the home screen. I keep wondering about that plus sign, that plus button.
Oh,
Oh, okay.
yeah, that's a weird plus button because I didn't know what was going to happen if I pressed that plus button. I thought it was add funds, but I guess it's invest in different. So if I wanted to invest in some more sustainable, I guess I can. It gives me a minimum. Oh, and also I do technically have $200 in my account for investing, because I got paid the dividends recently.
Oh,
I'm
nice.
like, yeah. I'm like, oh, this is the first time I got some substantial dividends. Can't quite quit my job just yet with $200 worth of dividends, but,
We're getting there.
uh, um, so I guess you can set up a regular investment if you want. Does that, it doesn't let me know.
Like how regular?
Yeah, is that monthly? Is that weekly?
Like I don't want to set anything until I know that.
Yeah.
And then one looks like it's $41. How do they? Is that per fund?
We apply a minimum amount. Okay, so it's basically because the price per index for this one is $34. And the brokerage fee, unfortunately, the brokerage fee is kind of expensive, I think, with ComSec Pocket. So if you're trading small amounts just to learn how to invest, you can be stung a little bit with fees. So I think it's usually a $5 trading fee. So they've rounded the 30. I don't know.
Got it. Okay.
But yeah, I'd like to know what regular means in this situation.
So what happens if well, yeah, maybe it doesn't get set right away.
Yeah, I don't know. So with with the sustainability leaders, sustainability, it says here the current price is 12. So if I own, I like having whole numbers of units because it's like the only way I can have a whole number in my portfolio is with the units. Can't have whole numbers with prices because that changes every day.
Yeah.
But this also gives you like a percentage of portfolio as well. So if I increase that, so the sustainable, yeah, that was the sustainable leaders. Can I just buy 10 units? Or do I have to calculate how much? Oh, it doesn't even give me the like purchase per unit. I have to
You have to do that mental load.
do that mental maths. I have to. Oh
Do not make your customers do the mental math.
no, I just wanted to buy 10 units. And 10 units would be, I guess, 120, but I'm like guessing myself now. Would I have to invest 140? Oh, it gives me a prox.
Okay, gotcha.
So
Okay.
it does do the maths eventually.
It doesn't tell you it's going to do it, though.
No, it doesn't.
That's kind of important in this case.
Yeah. Uh, what happens if I set that as a regular investment? I can cancel this later.
Let me go next.
Oh, there we go.
Oh,
We can pick
okay.
fortnightly or monthly. Oh, and we've got a date selector down here. Select your starting date. Oh, okay. Would it be nice if there was a bit more of that slightly up front?
Mm-hmm.
So if we wanted to invest regularly on, I don't know, the last day of the month or the first day of the month. So we can't pick. Oh, it only goes up to the 28 days because that's the minimum amount of days in every month. So if you want to, you can just pick the last day of the month. Oh, that's why they've got that button there.
Interesting. Interesting that they would set up the calendar that way. It's a
Yeah,
little confusing to me.
it is a little confusing, but I can kind of understand why they've done it that way. Because if you did the 30th and it was February.
True, yes. Okay. Usually I set mine by my paycheck, so
Oh
that
yeah.
I'm taking money out when I actually know that I'm not gonna not have any money in my account.
Because
Whatever.
I'm running my own company. I pay myself, but I pay myself towards the start of the month, and it should clear around the 4th. So if I
Mm-hmm.
put it around the 6th. So here's what will happen next. When your regular investment is due, it will combine them into a single order. Okay.
Okay.
Oh, and it's only a $2 fee for that one? Oh, I guess if you set up a regular investment, it's a little cheaper.
What happens on weekends and holidays? What's that about?
Oh,
Is there
basically
okay.
the stock market's closed.
Interesting that they put that in like a little you know, separate screen. I mean, they could have just put that like as a text right there on that page instead of making you click on that link,
Yeah.
bringing that. Um, I see little things like that tend to annoy me,
Mm.
um, just because it's just like more work for the information that you're trying to display. But usually these things follow like some sort of like a design guideline,
Yeah.
um, and don't always agree that that consistency is needed based on like the content you're trying to display.
Did that give me a new notification? No. I guess I get
Sure
a
did.
notification when it comes up. And is there a way to access? Um, via transaction history. So when your next investment will happen, you can view or cancel regular investments via your transaction history. That is I guess it is up there at the top,
Okay.
but that's not where I'd expect to see my regular investments.
Right, and I'd expect it to see it somewhere on that main page,
Yeah,
you know.
exactly. That was my expectation, was to be able to see something here on the home page. It does, like here, it's got next investment, but when I
And
tap on it, it tells me to go to transaction history. And you could just have an embedded link that just does take you to the transaction history.
right.
So instead of going to transaction history when I tap on that, it tells me to go there. So I have to
Yeah.
exit
Yeah.
it, one tap, side menu, two taps, 3 taps.
Again, it's following that probably a design pattern that was put in place, and that's being followed without really like going through like how smart is this actually. Um, I I see this all the time.
Mm.
And pretty much everything I've built the last few years, there's a very difficult conversation that happens between like the design function that's trying to make sure that everything is kind of set in a consistent way, and then the development and testing functions which don't always agree with those decisions,
Mm.
and then trying to figure out like what's the most usable thing.
Mm.
um, but I think this is a good example of a pattern that has been put in place that is maybe not great for this app.
Yeah. No, it's just like one minor annoyance. Um, and also, if I like to keep my number of units like whole numbers, and the unit price increases, I'm going to have to adjust this monthly investment,
Right.
because I don't have the option of just buying 10 units a month.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, that's a really good point.
And it's only because it makes me feel like it's highlighting to me my own anal tendencies. Because I'm like, I like having whole numbers. If I go into my bank account, I actually have
Uh,
whole numbers everywhere.
don't make me think so much.
Yeah, I know, but it's just one of those things that gives me a sense of control over, how much chaos there is. I'm like, if I got the
Totally.
option of like picking whole numbers.
No, I'm kind of the same way. As much as I love testing financial apps, and I loved working in that. Sometimes all the like, and there's also sometimes regulations around like what you need to show as well. Sometimes you can't, they wouldn't be able to just show like a whole number, for example.
Mm.
But so you have to keep that in mind too with like compliance, and the legal department has to look at every single thing and make sure everything is going to go well.
Mm.
um, so that's another layer of kind of like requirement gathering, I think, for any financial application, because it's such a heavily regulated industry that
Mm.
even some as little as like a decimal place matters. um, Something to keep in mind.
Yeah. 'Cause I
Oh,
guess from a localization point of view as well, the decimal place can sometimes be a comma in European dialects as well.
yes.
Um, and one thing I've noticed with Indian numbers, I think there's this term called the lakh, which it is kind of metric, but kind of not, because it is at, I think, 10 million. So 1 lakh is, so 10 million, it's either 10 million or something like that. It is a number, but it means that you don't put the comma on the third spot anymore.
Hmm.
Um, it's now at the second spot. Um, and it can be a little weird when you're used to having commas every third spot. Let's have a look at that. So let's
I'm
uh,
now interested in this.
Indian luck. Um, an Indian luck. Oh, it's 100,000.
Okay, yeah.
So they'll and a crore is the 10 million. So when they're writing larger numbers, the comma gets put in different spots.
Wow. Okay. I had not noticed this at all.
Yeah, and they'll say
Yeah.
something like, yeah, so 1.5 lakh rupees is uh 1,50, 000.
Okay. Whoa. Okay.
There we
That
go.
would a whole new level of complexity.
Yeah, I think Japanese currency can get a little bit like that too, because they've got the mun. Is it the mun? They tend to count bigger numbers tend to be counted in 10,000s rather than and so when you're trying to convert from a 10,000 base system,
Hmm.
it just gets a little funky.
All right, let's go back to the thing. So, guys, I want to click into that completed. So you have okay. What is that upcoming? Oh, upcoming is the upcoming investment.
Yeah. Okay. This fee is not as expensive as just doing, I think, a straight up investment. I think. But I got the option of cancelling, which is just a standard iOS alert box. Oh, this one's interesting. Should I guess the no is slightly more bold than the yes.
Yeah.
And this is kind of like
Weird.
a minimalistic iOS kind of. This is like Apple design guidelines. Should they be the same color?
I mean, it's like, oh, the no, like being bold would want you would just click no, right? Like, is what is the reasoning behind that?
Hmm. Because
People to click more no?
yeah, I guess so. Because you don't want people to cancel their regular investments, but the fact that it's further away, Hmm. I think with the Apple design guidelines, it's the indication that if something is destructive, if it will cancel something, it probably should be a red text on a white background,
Okay.
or
All right.
maybe because the yes is destructive. Would that make sense if that was red instead?
I guess I'm not like that influenced by color of something. And maybe that's just because I've been testing for a really long time. So it's just something that doesn't really bother me. But that's a good point.
Okay, my regular investment has been cancelled. It is one of those things that I saw a debate on Twitter recently on like how to design cancel buttons or those types of at least on mobile. What?
I mean, I guess I have a problem with things being red, because like my husband, for example, he's like colorblind.
Mm,
So-
yeah, and that's the stats for color blindness is like almost up to 1 in 5 guys have
Mhm.
some sort of color blindness. So this is not uncommon. Um, it's just most people can live most of their lives without realizing that they have even. Well, the most common one is the red-green color blindness, where you can't tell the difference between slightly off shades of meat and fresh colors of meat, which if I
Or stoplights.
yeah, like traffic lights and things like that. Um,
But yeah, it's just something I think about because I live with someone who's colorblind. So it's like constantly talking about colors with him, like, oh, okay, no, this is actually more purple than what you think it is.
mm.
Kind of thing. It's an interesting conversation to have on a regular basis. Makes you really hyper aware of those things. Okay, cool. Let's go back to the menu.
Uh, yeah, that's a little annoying. You go into transaction history, you have a play around, have a look through some of your transactions. But then that opens up the side menu, and yeah. So, and I guess it's because they don't have any bottom navbar navigation. So if I open up Stake instead, which is another investment app, and I'm going like $66, woo! And this one's used for American stocks, and I think they've just released Australian stocks as well. But they've got this bottom nav bar. Okay, so that's my watch list. For some reason, I've added a couple of stocks to watch. I guess there's search, and there's your I shouldn't have tapped on that one because that's probably got account information on it. But yeah, because you got the bottom nav bar, you don't. This is not really a complicated app itself. But yeah, so there's.
I guess I really like the bottom nav bar there.
Uh-huh.
It makes me feel like safer in the app. Like I know if I go down here and click on one of these buttons, I'll go back to where I need to go.
Mm. And
Uh,
I think having a bottom nav bar navigation is my preference as well over a sidebar navigation.
yeah, the sidebar. I guess it depends really on because I've seen apps with two. Like a sidebar and then having a bottom nav as well.
Mm.
Uh, I like the sidebar for like more like detailed stuff, I
So
guess.
there is
And
another finance app that if I can launch, which is my bank, which won't show, and it's actually top top navigation.
that's pretty cool.
I also really like the branding of this one. Um, and they've got like integrated support chat as well.
Yeah, I like this one. I like how easy it is to read. Um,
Yeah.
and it's pretty simple. I don't feel like I'm so overloaded with information.
But yeah, that's again not a bottom navbar navigation. But I think there are some there's with this option though, because you've got the sideways swipe, um, and because you're using non-standard UI elements, um, this this one here is going to have more accessibility issues. Just by looking at it, because whenever someone creates their own custom navigation, they don't tend to think about how someone on a screen reader is going to be able to navigate to this, or because they're sideways swipes. If someone's got who's a bit elderly, has got a bit of arthritis in their fingers, and they can't do that swipe action, they might not be able to use this app at all.
Right. That's a really good point. Can we test the accessibility of this navigation?
I probably do that on iOS. It's a little bit easier to test. So if I put on VoiceOver.
VoiceOver on. Up. Save up.
So
Activity payments. Activity payments. Activity payments button. Payments.
they've condensed. They've actually condensed the top bar to exist on a single view.
That is
Which is actually, whoops.
Hold near reader. Alert. Selected. VoiceOver. Select VoiceOver off.
no.
That is actually really cool. So if you have no accessibility options, it's the regular sideways swipe. But if you turn on VoiceOver,
VoiceOver on. Savers button.
it becomes, you can see it all on the one screen, so you don't have to do a weird sideways scroll.
Okay.
That's actually, I haven't seen that feature before. That's actually pretty cool.
Yeah, no, that's a good way to solve that problem.
Payments. Activity. Activity. Alert. Accessibility short. Select VoiceOver off.
I do like the budget breakdowns in this one. I mean, like I've spent a little more this month because I've been upgrading my desk recently and I've had to buy some more things. And purchased some prepaid for some holiday stuff, so that's why the Good Life stuff is looking very expensive. But I like the iconography.
I like the whole look of it. I think it's yeah.
So
Yeah,
you
that's
can see
cool.
that, yeah, I've most of it's been in Airbnb and some flights. But yeah, you can see like how it breaks down different categories of the budget.
I like the different colors for the different categories.
Mm.
I think it kind of breaks it up really nicely. Because when you have like a lot of categories and transactions, it can be a little hard on the eyes sometimes. I like how they organize this.
Mm. Yeah. Actually quite surprised about the adaptiveness to screen reader.
Mm-hmm.
It's the first time I'd seen that feature. I'm actually impressed. Hmm.
That
Well,
was steak. No, that was a
no,
steak.
that was up. And steak was the US.
I like this one too. I think this one is much easier to read than the first one we looked at. And
Yeah.
did the ComSec one have a view to look at like the performance of the funds?
No, I don't think so. And I think because if I look into, actually, there might be a way. Fund overview. So it gives you. Oh, there you go. You can see it over time, but it's a bit more hidden.
Yeah, that was quite a lot of clicking to get to that, or and scrolling to get to that.
Yeah.
That's one of the first things I look at when I decide on what I want to invest in.
Mm.
Are there any links to like a prospectus too? I find a lot of companies don't do this, or they'll just send you the prospectus in the email, which is fine. But I'd like to be able to just download it.
As in the what's it invested in?
Right, like what, just a overview of the fund. It's usually like a big PDF document.
Oh yeah, yeah. Because these are all index funds in this one. They'll list. I think they list the top companies they're invested in, and the percentage, but they don't seem to. I think if you want to dig into it, you'd have to get the more about this.
Yeah, right there.
Okay, product disclosure statement. There you go,
That's,
PDS.
that's what you want, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it does have a link out to it. It's the beta shares.
Yeah, I think those things should be up there with like when you are deciding to invest in a fund, they
Mm.
should provide a link to that instead of hiding it in this like, almost terms and conditions looking like
Yeah,
page.
it's behind a button called disclosure.
Right.
Or
Um,
was it no more info?
that was more info.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what's the disclosure? It's just okay, just a general terms and conditions.
Yeah. Like for an app that aims to teach you how to invest or help you invest, I think they need to be a little more up on the whole, like read the entire prospectus before you like actually decide to invest in a fund of any type.
Yeah, I think from building apps, like people don't read. uh, the previous app I was working on was for superannuation, so like your retirement savings here in Australia. The way it works here is that everyone has to make a compulsory contribution, and it's increased to 10% of your salary. It gets paid on top of your salary into your retirement fund.
Okay.
And it's a pretty cool system. It does mean that Australians, even though we have like a tiny population, 20 odd million people, we've got $3 trillion worth of stuff saved for retirement. And I've done some analysis. The amount of money we've saved per person is relatively high. It's a bit higher than the US, where even though there's a lot of funds under management for retirement, it averages out to about $11,000, I think, per retirement funds from around the world. So the United States has huge amount of assets under management, but it averages out to 17K per person.
Yeah. And right, there's a lot of people that don't have any retirement savings here, which is really a big problem, actually. Um, just with the wealth income gap. Um,
Yeah.
it's definitely felt when you look at the retirement savings across different like socioeconomic economic spectrums. Um, I did some research on that a few months ago, and it was a pretty big disparity. But this is an interesting number.
Mm.
Go Australia.
Yeah, I mean that's but also Norway is a really interesting story. When I read about this, basically Norway got rich exporting oil in the 70s. And
Hmm.
instead of spending it on fancy ass buildings like Abu Dhabi and those Middle Eastern countries did recently, basically Norway was like, well, we need to invest in our people. So we put it all into a retirement fund. And they've got this big, giant ass fund. They can only draw down 3% per year to pay to fund their own internal pensions, and that's all they can spend it on. And they also have fund managers that only invest in like sustainable companies, or they have some sort of ethics framework to figure out how this big giant pot of Norwegian money gets invested. So I mean, like, sure, they made all that money from extracting oil, but they've tried to do something ethical with that money and fund their own
Right.
retirement fund. And that's why, on average, there's a ridiculous amount of money per person in Norway. um, but yeah, it's just kind of interesting in a way.
Yeah, no, this is really interesting data.
And this is kind of just under public funds as well, because I think the UK doesn't appear in this list, even though they do have a lot of funds under management for retirement. I think Australia had like a very similar system to that, where it was kind of unionized. It was kind of part of the your job more, rather
Mhm.
than it being a public available asset or something. I don't know. I really don't know how these numbers are calculated. This is just my rough yardstick, back of an envelope calculation, based off a Wikipedia page, and who knows if the information's correct in Wikipedia. But yeah, the previous app I was working on was to help manage your superannuation. And we were trying to build the app in such a way to help educate people about their retirement funds and all of this stuff. And I was digging into the metrics on, how much time people spent on pages and things. Most people don't read.
Right. I think what I learned from a financial company is that like that information should be easier to find. Um,
Mm.
and you know, it's not a big deal to put like for something like more fund information because it is money you are investing and you should know all the risks that come with that before you actually make a decision. I think for apps that are teaching people how to invest, it's hugely important to push that, to say, no, you should read this stuff.
Yeah, yeah.
That to me is the ethical thing to do. Um, don't just make decisions based on 1 month, 2 months, a year of history. Look at the whole, strategy for investing in that. What is the fund manager strategy for investing?
Yeah.
Uh, Ask yourself those questions.
Mm.
Um, I think a lot of the investment apps that I've seen don't really do a very good job of that. Um, the advice is very like superficial.
Mm. Yeah, and I would also like to counter that. I would say, like, maybe the mobile app is not necessarily the best place to try and learn that stuff in more detail. Um,
You know, Yeah, that's a good point. Um, but then you have other questions such as if your business is only a mobile app,
Mm.
like a mobile investment app, like for example, like Robinhood, I don't think has a web view or a web part. I don't use it, but um, then that's a little bit different. You
Mm.
still have that like responsibility to provide that information, or well, you should have that responsibility.
Yeah.
Um, Even if it makes things a little more heavy than you want, it's putting like knowledge into the hands of the consumer instead of having them spend that time trying to find it.
Yeah, like I think it's an interesting point for an app like ComSec Pocket, where the focus is trying to introduce you to investing. They don't really do a lot of encouragement of you to learn how the fund is managed, or like why it makes a reasonable index fund. They do
Mhm.
have the limited option of only having 7 investment options. Um, but yeah, that's a good point. I was just This is the app I was working on previously, um, and I don't have my account active anymore.
Mhm.
Um, but I was pretty proud of what we had built. I know there was like an overview of investments based off your categories and all that jazz as well. And we had, so on this screen you've got the question mark, which does give you more information that you can dive into. So if there were tooltips embedded such that if you wanted to learn more, there was at least half a paragraph of text explaining it.
There's, there's something there,
Yeah.
right?
The At least the product owner's intention with this app was to be kind of like your buddy, who would be. It's supposed to be like the tone was meant to be a little bit friendlier, a little bit more approachable, not quite as full of finance jargon as a lot of the heavier finance apps could be sometimes. But yeah. I think we are at time.
Already. Oh wow.
Yeah, we're at an hour.
Yes.
Yeah, an hour's worth of pairing, and I didn't take any notes because I was too busy testing. And like we discovered some really interesting bugs across a few different finance apps. Uh,
Yeah, and I honestly, my accessibility testing is definitely always kind of like something that I don't put as a priority. Um, it's done, but it's not maybe done in the most deepest of ways. So I think what I've learned today is that I need to be better at that.
I think at the end of the day, it's not that we're encouraging lawsuit-driven development, even though it could come up. I think in the finance space, it's an important point to consider. The thing is, you're not really likely to get sued, really, even with a finance app, if you give people an alternative, which can be fine. Uh,
Yeah, I also sat in on a usability session with a blind person once. This was a couple years ago, and it was actually really heartbreaking to hear them talk about how they cannot use most of the internet.
Yeah, yeah, it is. It is actually really hard, and I would encourage anyone to play around with some of the accessibility settings on their phones. It's fairly easy to enable shortcuts to make this easier to test, as well, and it doesn't have to be a high bar.
Right.
Our minimum standard for accessibility was pretty low in the grand scheme of things. But I think it's important to raise those types of questions with designers and developers earlier on in the process. But can be hard if you're stuck in a test silo at the end of the process. It's a little harder to influence what happens at the beginning.
Right, right, totally. Cool.
So yeah, if anyone wants to see any more content created by Djuka, you did a session-based test management session. That's up on YouTube, and I think that's connected to exploratory testing. It's always good to learn a bit more along that. And I've got a couple of other links that I will share with people once I post this up live on mobile testing, metrics and quality, and a bunch of other things related to mobile app testing, especially in the finance sector. Cool.
Cool.
Thank you.
Thank you.